Hi, good evening. Brilliant to be here. I hope you've had a fantastic day. We've had the weirdest year in history for all of us. Um, it's had some incredible impacts. We're going to cover off on those today. I'm sure you've heard a lot about the impact of this pandemic on the industry generally, and we're going to focus on the impact on betting on esports. And for that, we have an absolutely amazing panel. And they're going to do the bulk of the talking. I'm sure nobody particularly wants to hear from me. And so what I'm going to ask each of them to do in turn is introduce themselves, where they work, also to give you an idea of into esports, what's their esports background. And I'm going to start with Marco Blume from Pinnacle. Marco.
Hi, Ian, and hey, everybody else. Yeah, as Ian said, my name is Marek Blume. I work for Pinnacle for now 13, 14 years. Pinnacle, probably known as one of the first real big esports bookmakers. We do esports for close to 10 years now, and so I've been involved in the esports scene for a long, long time.
Cool.
That's it.
And Adam? I'll ask Adam Savinson from Betway.
Hi everyone, yes, Adam here from Betway, head of esports. So I've been working with Betway for close to 7 years now, running the esports department for just over 5 years of those 7 years. My intro to esports was mostly because I loved watching it myself. Started with StarCraft 2, being quite an avid StarCraft 2 player, moving into League of Legends and Counter-Strike, which I still play and watch loads today, probably too much.
Yeah, like all of us. And Marek Suchar from Oddin.
Hi everyone, I'm from Oddin. We are B2B esports, odds feed and risk management provider, and we focus mainly on live engagement. So pretty much allow bettors to bet as much as possible across the course of the game and have many in-play objectives as possible. I came into the industry from the perspective, again, esports, not necessarily betting. I've started from a different angle than Adam, actually from Dota 2. I've been playing it from very first when it was Defense of the Asians, and I stick to it pretty much ever since. So this is my angle, and this is what brought me to the industry.
And then finally, Martin Dachselt from Bays.
Dachselt, yeah.
Martin?
Yeah, last but not least, I hope. I'm Martin. I'm the CEO of Base Esports, and we are working mainly as an esports data provider. We have deals with Riot for their major leagues and, for example, with ESL. Yeah, in my career in esports, it was a bit of accident. So while I was playing casual bit League of Legends, Silver, and so not very good, and StarCraft and World of Warcraft, I joined Dojo Madness as CTO, and Dojo Madness had a cooperation with Sportradar, so we was providing probabilities and calculations around for professional esports. And yeah, then we founded a joint venture. This is Space Esports, and yeah, I joined there as CEO. And yeah, I'm very happy, and it's a very exciting industry. So my background is only maybe 5 years in total. So I still learning each day.
Great. Thanks, Martin. Thanks, guys. If we go back to, let's say, January, we knew that there was a little bit of a problem with a virus in China. Some of us who travel to Asia more regularly were having, some restrictions, some worries. None of us, I don't think, could have guessed where we would end up within August 2020, both in terms of lives, but also, our general day-to-day lives, but our professions, our business. It's extraordinary and completely unpredictable. And whilst the world has been wrapped up in this tragedy, it has had a remarkable effect on the esports industry and esports betting. And that's really what I want to talk about today. But there are some general points relating to esports betting that are worth making that have absolutely nothing to do with the pandemic. But before we get to that, what I'd like you to describe briefly is the impact, say the difference between what you were doing and planning in January to what you're doing and planning now in August 2020 after all that's happened. And Adam, if we could start with you and Betway, how's your life changed?
Sure. I like this question because lots of people think it would have a massive impact in our strategy and our day-to-day life working on Betway Esports. The reality for us is it didn't change anything. So esports has always been a massive focus for us. So even though the wider industry maybe had an awakening over the prominence of esports, other bookmakers have seen esports creep up, whether that's due to League of Legends, CSGO, Dota, or whether that's because of the rise in FIFA betting. But for Betway Esports, nothing changed whatsoever. We've always been committed to become and to maintain market-leading presence for our key markets. And that is exactly where we are. I think the biggest difference for me is with that awakening is competitors. So people that in the past maybe dismissed esports are now coming out of the woodwork saying, we want to be the best, we want to dive head first. Lots of very interesting and questionable esports marketing activities by companies that don't necessarily know their place, but also coming from that, some interesting and fresh new perspectives. But from a Betway perspective, nothing's changed, but surely the industry definitely has.
Great. Yeah, and Adam, before I move on, in terms of growth, I mean, I know you can't talk about specific figures, obviously, but I'm guessing it's significantly ahead of where you thought you'd be in August. I hope.
I mean, we're very optimistic, Ian, but esports is obviously doing extremely well. The global rise of esports viewership that has come out of people being at home and maybe having less extra free time where they're watching more esports than before, that's obviously had an impact on the effectiveness of our marketing. So pre-existing sponsorships were hitting more viewers than we initially expected, and that of course relates to increase in performance. But as I mentioned, nothing has really changed for us. This is always what we were expecting. Esports to continue to grow and to continue in global relevance, and we're going down the same trajectory as we were always planning on doing.
Cool. And Marco, same question?
Yeah, and on almost the same answer as Adam, right? I mean, the thing is, like, we've been doing esports for so long. The only thing which was nice is that we could have 100% of our staff focus on esports, which was quite nice. If you don't have to, if every single person that works for you does esports because nothing else is going, you actually can go down to nitty gritty detail that maybe doing the daily grind you can't reach. In terms of growth, like I've seen the numbers that other industry bookmakers have posted. It's obviously different. If you're already at a high level, you're not going to see 200%, 300% growth, right? If I see 300% growth, sure. Like that's not happening anymore. Like we are at such a high level. So that being said, I mean, many of the guys who were bored who normally bet other sports bet esports, right? Which if it's the only game in town, people got to bet something. So in that sense, it was a good time for esports.
Yeah, sure. And Marek, you guys have obviously grown a lot in terms of awareness. How's it been for the business generally?
Yeah, I can definitely follow up what Adam and Marco said. When it comes to what happened to the industry, there was a huge surplus of the traders that were trading anything else but esports. So they eventually came to esports, and we were fully staffed for the regular coverage of esports in end of February. And suddenly we were lacking in our coverage because all of those tier 2, tier 3 matches that nobody ever touched were suddenly traded by the bookmakers, by the B2B solution providers. So we had to definitely adjust. We almost doubled in terms of capacity of our trading department to reflect on this. And outside of that, yes, a lot of people came to the industry suddenly being market experts on esports, which was not that much actually true. And over the time, we will see actually those implications in the things that are truly factually correct around esports and which are not. So I guess the market will eventually settle, and there will be a clear knowledge bringers and some other stuff, other people, I would say, other companies.
Sure. And Martin, how things going at Bays in light of all of this?
Yeah, so maybe the start was in the start there was the challenge. So suddenly there was questions: does this tournament happen? The offline tournaments, or is it cancelled, or is it without audience? I remember Katowice. It was it happens, and then and we had even one of our staff there, and no, then okay, no audience, and then no media and nobody's allowed. So it was really challenging, and of course our customers want to know, hey, what can you deliver? Yeah, and some things was cancelled. Yeah, this is a difficult situation. Then there are some differences, technical differences. For example, you have delay for other kind of delay for online tournaments, and we needed to sort out what's the contract, what do the customers want. So after we sorted out it, of course, we saw then growing business, which was good. And as everybody's, as Marek, I think, saw too, we saw new bookmakers moving into this array. Yeah, so we even had some special fast track tools to get them on board faster. So we had over 30 new bookmakers, which started to provide esports within 2 months. Then, of course, the turnover increased for the bookmakers, for the most bookmakers. So, and in the traditional esports, significant. Yeah. So what Mark said, 200, 300% for the small ones was we saw very often. On the other side, the most surprising was, of course, FIFA. Yeah. Which was for us 0 before, and then it even took it passed even CS:GO, which is most valuable usually. Yeah. So it was a very exciting time. It was challenging, and we are still, there are new tournament organizers, and there's a lot of new content from some people which do not have the experience. So we need to educate them what is needed, what's the demand from the industry, what's important. And usually they come then 2 weeks before the tournament. Hey, can you sell the data? And we say, that's very short term, because we need to plan our staff. The service providers like Oddin need to plan their staff. The bookmakers need to take it into their coverage. So a bit more lead time would be great. Yeah. Yeah. So we need to be a bit more agile at the moment, I would say.
Yeah, and in light of what's happened since the return, and I'm thinking particularly of FIFA, on this theme, Martin, you guys saw this big surge, as did everybody in FIFA,
Yeah.
and to some extent in the other sports simulators. Now that, let's say, real football has returned, and we're looking at preparation for the the new NBA season has begun. We're talking NASCAR coming back, Formula One's back, Formula E will be back. But obviously proper high-level football is now back. What's happened to demand in those games for you?
I think we will see there a decline. I do not think it will go back to 0, because some hardcore soccer fans, maybe they like now to watch it. Yeah. Of course, this huge surge was caused by the effect that the bookmakers pushed it under the traditional soccer category, football category. So the people came there and saw, okay, there's nothing running but E-League something, and then they placed their bet there. And of course, if now the traditional sports is coming back, it will disappear, or it will go at a lower end, I would guess. Yeah. Maybe this is a more question for Adam and Marco. So I would expect, therefore, for the FIFA, for this sports like esports, which had to surge probably 1,000% or something, or 10, even more. I think we will see their decline. For CS:GO and so, okay, it was a surge, and maybe we see a small dip, but on the other side, I think we will have their sustained growth path, and I think we will reach the normal growth path again soon.
Yeah, Marek, anything to add to that from Oddin's side?
I guess if we look at FIFA, we should be probably more speaking about its parallel with virtual betting than actually with traditional esports, because I actually doubt
Yeah,
that anybody knows those players behind. Yes, this is
sure.
esports in a sense of competition, but at the same time, this doesn't have the necessary following as Astralis in CS:GO, as EG in Dota 2, as other teams. So I suspect when somebody goes or went in the past to the bookmaker side, they were looking for some action, and they were not that there was not that much what to pick from. So they
Yeah,
opted even for these tournaments. And of course, if the real action returns, we will see a decline. And there will be
yeah,
definitely bettors that will stay because this would be some action for them, but it is closer to virtuals. On the other hand, should we speak about core esports? There was a surge in content. People were staying at home, so there was, of course, the natural decrease in demand in terms of volume, which might slightly decrease, but it's just natural because of the situation that happened. But outside of that, the trend would continue that the market as such would only grow.
And Marco, how did you feel? How did Pinnacle go in terms of those sports simulators? Did you guys dive in there?
Yeah, I mean, we offered a lot more than we normally offer. I mean, there's actually one tournament which I liked. It was the Bundesliga Cup. Bundesliga. Well, that was quite nice, you know,
Yeah,
because they did a fun tournament where you had a fan or whatever, and a star playing basically, or professionally FIFA guy. So that was kind of enjoyable. You know, but I don't think it's here to stay, right? I mean, the
yeah,
audience is not quite there for this. You know, people who are considering themselves esports fans, you know, don't really watch this so much. You know, traditional
yeah.
sports people, you know, will go back to traditional sports. So yeah, it's a nice niche thing. I like it, you know. But you know, if it ever goes big, I'm not gonna gatekeep it, you know. But in terms of action, there's very little action on it.
Yeah. And Adam, is your experience the same at Betway?
But I think Marek hit the nail on the head with this. From my perspective, we're talking about this being FIFA, but the way that the bookmakers offered this, they didn't even mention the word FIFA most of the time. It was e-soccer. This was a sport replacement. So they were watching it as a gap filler, betting on it as a gap filler, not
Yeah,
because they had a love for FIFA or love for the game or for the players or the teams in the same way that drives esports. So do I think FIFA betting will go away, or e-soccer betting, whatever you want to call it? I think in line with what Marek said, it will stay as a gap filler that people are now become more comfortable with. But I don't think it makes a difference whether it's the best player in the world playing, or somebody that is, you know, much lower down the rankings. I
yeah,
do believe that there will continue to be FIFA or e-soccer betting, and I think that is mostly because it's, you know, you mentioned virtuals, Marek. Virtuals, as everybody knows, is essentially a casino game where there's a percentage chance of winning, and it's like pulling a lever on a slot. You win or you lose. I think a lot of the traditional sports bettors who may be less inclined to play virtuals may feel more comfortable playing e-soccer or whatever you want to call it, because there's no predetermined outcome.
yeah, yeah. I'll tell you what was interesting from an ESIC and integrity point of view was suddenly a whole bunch of new reports and new types of ethical and corruption type problems, where we suddenly had, you know, through our reporting line, young FIFA players calling up, having been offered insane amounts of money to throw matches, followed by threats when they refused, and you know, a bunch of weirdness that had never come up in the traditional esports for us, but the sort of thing that I used to deal with when I still worked in traditional sport prior to 2015, prior to founding ESIC. And it was really, really interesting to see that kind of old school fixing or attempted fixing coming into esports in that way. I'm not saying it doesn't exist in our more traditional esports titles, but it was very obviously a traditional sports type fixer coming into trying the same nonsense that they get away with in tennis and football and cricket and so on. And it most notable since real sport returned, that those reports and those investigations that we've carried out have, I would say, more or less completely disappeared. So that's, yeah, and that's a good thing. We don't want these people in esports. They're not good for any of us. And so putting that side of things to one side, let's say we've largely experienced a surge in viewership, in content, in number of tournaments, particularly in the big three. Well, obviously not so much League of Legends, because Riot have kept that carefully controlled. I'd like to look outside of our core betting products, being, you know, CS, Dota, and League, and saying, are you noticing, any of you, any meaningful rise or potential in other games other than the big three? And if I could start with Marco on that.
Yeah, we're going to jump on the Valorant hype train now. Yeah, so Valorant
No,
is
unless you want to. Yeah.
Well, the only game that I think has a real shot right now, you know, is Valorant. You know, and that has potential, but mostly because of Riot. You know, Riot has everything figured out, from the teams, from the franchises, from the distribution network. I mean, everything is set in stone. So, and Riot has the money behind it. So if they, you know, and it's a good game compared to other games that also have a lot of money, like Overwatch. You know, so it's actually solid. You know, I think Valorant has a chance. Everything else is all the same. It's still niche and will not make it. I mean, I don't think Fall Guys is going to be the esports of 2020 or 2021, even though it's.
Hey, Adam, any views on that?
Look, I think in terms of what might be coming, of course, Marco is completely correct that if Riot gets it right, Valorant is going to be successful. There's obviously the main advantage of the fact that it doesn't have real life guns. There's no blood. It's more accessible to certain media distribution that could really lead to a more global appeal. And that is exciting, but it's also super early days. So has there been, you know, the noticeable increase in betting? Not yet. One thing that has seen some level of success, I'd say, is still very small. Call of Duty, there is some betting. I see Marco's skepticism on that one, but I think the main issue with the main issue with Call of Duty is there's so little of it, and when you can have potentially 2 weeks, 3 weeks between a single game, that's not enough content for there to be a betting industry. So summing it up, no, we're still seeing the big three.
What do you think, Martin?
Yeah, I mean, why are the big three where they are? They are because there's an ecosystem and a fan base since 10 years. So obviously, the longer a game is around and is successful, the more interesting is it for people to bet on it, and the more interesting is it for operators to offer something. And we saw this, you know, Fortnite came up and everybody was talking about Fortnite, and they do huge search, and then it's the wrong audience. It's more fun oriented, so it's not competitive, or not so competitive. And I think Riot, we are working with them together. They are very professional and they have a long-term strategy. Yeah. On the other side, of course, we hope that there will be more titles which reach this level of sustainability long term, and we are talking with other parties in the market too. And I think all are looking at Riot and trying to understand how to make such a thing successful. Yeah, so that the teams, that you have teams which are working, that the players have their outcome, the teams have their outcome. Yeah, the sponsors get a return on invest. There's a lot of things which need to come together, and of course, it needs to be a nice user experience to watch it. That's one of the problems, for example, with Overwatch. I mean, you cannot. It's very, very difficult to watch it. There are a lot of particle effects, and they even need to do some special stuff that you can even transfer to Twitch, because otherwise the whole compression would not work. And of course, so if you design a game, you need to ensure that the audience has some fun around it. It's anyway more difficult for esports than traditional sports, because you need to have played it, you need to have some insights, but there should be some paths to understand what's going on. Yeah. I
Yeah.
was trying to watch Call of Duty. I'm not playing it. It was very difficult for me to follow what's going on there, to be honest.
Yeah, I think, look, Marek, I'll give you a shot on this one, but I was actually going to avoid mentioning Overwatch, simply because in my world that it's a dead duck. I cannot see that succeeding in terms of a betting product or an esport. But you know, that's just me. What do I know? Marek, any views on other games beyond the big three?
Actually, it's hard to add anything else than what was already said. I definitely agree on Adam's note that Valorant doesn't have terrorist side, right? Which is definitely an improvement
Yeah,
for Olympics and all other things, and there is no blood. So this addresses actually a lot of issues, concerns around FPS
yeah,
as esport.
yeah, yeah,
Just to add, we've seen also some pickup in terms of Call of Duty and Rainbow Six Siege, but this is really minor.
yeah,
One of the topic, because we are speaking to global audience, right, might be the King of Glory or Arena of
yeah,
Valor or Honor of Kings, the same name for the same title, just some
yeah,
alternatives of it. So this is
yeah,
definitely a title on the radar. And with that being said, this is already mobile title, which brings its certain challenges for betting. And at the same time, we see a specific pickup in a certain market, like for example, PUBG Mobile in India. So, and
yeah,
of course, this is esports, right? So we will see potentially in 5 years something that right now we have no idea about. So there
yeah,
will be definitely something else coming to the market, potentially being high star as PUBG was, and eventually declining, and eventually coming back to the scene. This is the fun about esports, right? So we'll see these kind of
sure.
movements, I guess, going forward as well.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, one of the things that strikes me is that a huge amount of what you've had to say here ties into, putting aside the big three, where you do have the history that Martin mentioned, is that the attitude and the cooperation of the publisher is a really big deal here, because I think we would all agree, for example, that PUBG could be a really good live betting product. It could be really, really interesting if Bluehole and the provision of data was good. Similarly with perhaps with Rainbow Six, because I think most gamers might say that Rainbow Six is a better game than Counter-Strike, but it's never really taken off in that way. Its growth has been pretty steady, but not so much on the betting front. And I think that's my own view is that's got a lot to do with Ubisoft's attitude towards the provision of data than it has to do with its potential as a betting product. Does anyone agree with that? Or am I miles off?
I don't think you're miles off, but I mean, one thing we have to differentiate is people playing the game and people watching a game, right? I mean, those are not the same things. You know, some games are very playable. I, for example, think Overwatch is a very playable game. It's actually, I don't mind it as a game. I play it myself. Sometimes I think it's fun. As a viewer, terrible, right? So we really need to make a hard demarcation line between those two camps. You know, and so what you're saying, in other words, I don't disagree with at all, because if you build something that's palatable to an audience, meaning tournament circuits, a little background information on the teams, some narratives that people can, some villains, some heroes, then an esport becomes what it is in esports, right? And that's the difference between a PUBG, which is really hard to follow, right? I mean, you don't really understand what's happening in front of you. There's 100 people running around, or 30, 40 people running around. Expression of skill also becomes a very temporary thing. It's might be fun to see a headshot, but nothing beats, like a Counter-Strike, where you see the planning, they're rotating, and even if you never played the game, you just understand that if somebody rotates now, they're pulling up a trap or whatever, and you like this expression of skill, and it's not necessarily the mechanical skill that you like. That's always been.
I agree. Guys, one thing that Marek did mention that I would love to follow up on is the mobile titles, because the viewership, I spent some time in Asia last year, and there's a lot of coverage, a lot of viewership. We're seeing a lot, as you say, I mean, games that have different titles but are more or less the same game. We've seen a cricket title come up in India with 48 million users. These are significant numbers. Do you think there is scope for this? What are the difficulties with creating a betting product out of these games? Adam, you guys got any views on this at Betway?
So look, a lot of those games you're referring to, I'm guessing Mobile Legends Bang Bang in Southeast Asia is a very prominent one.
Yeah.
Those are quite often popular markets that I'm not dealing with myself. So my level of knowledge there is slightly limited. But in terms of how this is actually going to work and how you actually build a betting product, I don't necessarily see it as a, how do I explain it? As a barrier for future growth. I do believe that there can be betting on a mobile product. The difficulty often lies on those mobile screens. It's quite difficult to see everything that's going on. So where I see a big opportunity is with League of Legends Wild Rift. I believe that will open up a whole new world of potential customers who maybe play the game on their phone, but will understand how League of Legends works for watching the esports on a desktop. So I do think that there is a bright future with mobile gaming. Obviously, if we're taking into consideration India as a market where there's most people do not have a desktop PC, and therefore you're never able to get into those games to learn and understand and to watch them. The games that bridge the gap between mobile and desktop could be a really nice way of building a massive industry. So I think we're just not there yet. I think it's a matter of time.
Yeah. And anyone else want to pick up on that point? Martin, are you guys seeing action?
What Marco said, the skill, and the question is, if on mobile, you have a lot of aim support and such things. So because your interaction is limited, I mean the precision you have with a mouse, you cannot have with a finger on the tablet. Yeah. And the question is, there will be always the question of is how much is done by some logic behind and how much is the player doing. So for strategic games, of course, they choose the right strategy. Yeah, so they're good players in that sense, but this explosiveness, he's now doing a pentakill. Yeah, the question if this is transportable, and so that you have this long time engagement of the audience, that they feel really excited to watch it. Yeah, and the other aspect, I think, I mean, online, okay, there's not much difference probably, but if you look at the big venues, and I watched some broadcastings of mobile tournaments, and they are sitting there in front of a mobile. This is not. I mean, I'm not sure if they can transport in the Cologne arena. Yeah, if they can transport this feeling with a mobile game. Yeah. To the audience, I'm not sure. Maybe it's possible, but I have there some a bit doubts. Yeah. And the last point, of course. The Asian markets for betting at the moment, it's still very difficult. In a lot of the markets, it's forbidden officially. Korea, I think there are some discussions if they open it. India, it's forbidden. China, of course, there was no huge crackdown on all kind of casino gambling. I think you heard about that some people went into prison there. Yeah. So it's a difficult, fragile market if you look only at the betting part.
Yeah. No.
On the other side, it's the biggest market. We know that. Yeah.
Sorry, Marek.
On the other side, of course, we know that there's a very large volume. Yeah.
Sorry, Marek. We had a bit of lag there.
That is regarding the delay on the data. If you think about mobile esports, they are significantly faster than PC esports. And if you compare that, and let's say take Brawl Stars, for example, there will not be those hurdles that Martin mentioned regarding the regulation in Asia. The round can take up to 3-4 minutes, I would say, in a way. And if the delay on data is 2 minutes, the half of the game is pretty much finished by the time you do something. And since 90% of the volume happens in live, because that's where the engagement happens, this can be actually crippling that betting volume and that entire experience, storytelling, betting, and all these sort of things. So I guess this would be one of the key challenges. If this should be successful for mobile, there should be zero latency or very small latency in terms of broadcasting, similarly access to data, and similar betting experience. Otherwise, this can cripple the entire live betting experience.
Yeah, that does lead us directly into one of the audience questions, actually, which I wanted to leave some time for, which is, we'll start with the basic one, is where is the betting focused in terms of volume? Is it pre-match or live? In terms of percentage, what are you finding these days, Marco?
So live, it's clearly in live now, but live is much longer, right? Like people, like if you think about the attention span, right? I mean, the betting usually picks up a few hours before the game actually starts, right? I mean, who cares like days in advance? It's not really that exciting to bet on. So people get excited, and then the live is just so long, right? And then you have map 1, map 2, map 3, map 4, map 5 sometimes. So live can take quite a while in an esports game if you have a five map one. So live has superseded now pre-live for sure.
Yeah, and Adam, has that been Betway's experience?
Yeah, I mean, we see a trend, whether it's based on game, whether it's based on country, that over time things go more towards live, more towards mobile. Esports certainly had a lag, and when we first started our esports venture, it was like looking 5 years into the past. And as those 5 years have gone past, we're now catching up. So yeah, certainly live is very important.
And from a provision on your side, Marek and Martin, starting with Marek, how's this affected your business in terms of, you know, this strong shift towards live betting?
We started with focus on live because we've known that this is where the focus would be, the engagement would be, the volume would be. So for sure we provide a pre-match as well because it's a necessity. But at the same time, our full focus is in live betting, in having as much high uptime as possible, as many betting opportunities as possible. Because yes, this would never go, I guess, the other way around. That it would go from 80-90% in favor of live to 60-70, and pre-match would be actually getting some share, right? This would be quite the opposite. Yeah. So eventually we will get above, I suspect, 90%, and the trend would only continue.
Yeah. Martin?
And for us, live is the core product. For pre-match, you do not need much data, so everybody can collect it themselves. Just the results from the previous games, maybe a bit more, but that is it. And of course, live is much more challenging. You need fast data. You need as many data points as possible, and it's not only to create the right odds, but to automatize the whole process, closing markets and all the stuff. And there's some regulations, for example, in US, that you need to have official data and even provide them to the punters later, that you can see what was going on, so that the odds was not cheated. Yeah, and so this is the core of our business. Without live, we would not be here.
Yeah, look, I'm going to end on a question, one of the audio, related to an audience question here. Where the question was, which are the main esports betting geographies in terms of where the punters are based? And in particular, talking about or speculating from the audience point of view that this may be in future the USA, but that currently only Nevada has made esports betting legal. I'll kick off to say that that isn't the case anymore. Esports betting is allowed under various rules in New Jersey and Nevada, and in negotiation with various of the state betting regulators, in particular Iowa, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, as ESIC, because in America, you know, for better or worse, we effectively, as an organization, I mean, the Esports Integrity Commission, act as a sort of a gatekeeper for the regulators, because there still isn't very much knowledge within the US about esports betting. They're still getting their head around sports betting, and esports betting is, you know, is a bit of a mind melt for a lot of the regulators. But in terms of potential and in terms of where you guys see your audience, and I realize obviously this is, you know, subject to your license conditions, so I'm not asking you to tell me where you are going to get your volume from, but where do you think the volume as a general proposition is coming from? Adam?
Yeah, I guess you touched on it at the end in regards to licenses. I mean, what we've seen is, in general, where we are operating, there are punters that are interested in esports betting. Some countries are more pragmatic and more in tune with esports betting than others. For example, Italy isn't a particularly strong market, but Sweden, with its history in Counter-Strike, is a great market in that regard. But in general, it's quite simple. It's where the viewership is. So, like licenses aside, if it was, which countries would be the best betting markets? Well, China would be, America would be, Brazil would be.
China.
Where if PUBG took off, India would be. It's where the viewers are.
Yeah. Marco, you guys have a bigger geographical. You see the same thing?
Yeah, of course. The classic, like Northern Europe over the CIS to Southeast Asia, right? That's usually the esports belt, right? You have Southern Europe is very thin, like all of the countries, like now we can speculate if it has to do with the warm weather, that people don't like to see the things, or the internet. It's just, that's you do have a nice South American with Brazil, a few other like smaller countries in Brazil, South America was popping up, and obviously the US is the big hope, right? Esports is huge in the US traditionally. Esports has a huge viewership there, so it would be a miracle if esports betting would not be huge eventually. The only thing is that regulation in the US is complicated, and then for some reason, right, esports is special on top of it. So that we always have to speak specifically about the esports regulation shows there's some extra hurdle that we have to cross over. But undoubtedly, if we look at the long term, there's no way that the US is not regulating esports, like in the same way that everybody else has. They want to make money, right? And esports has people who want to bet on it.
Yeah,
that's a good combination.
Yeah. Oh, we know, and I'm not asking you as a bookmaker subject to license conditions to comment on this, but I know from my work that there is a massive betting fraternity, esports betting fraternity in America, spending a lot of money. It's just not doing it legally. If that can be harnessed and expanded under regulated licensed markets, it's going to be massive, because obviously in China you've got the numbers, but you don't have the cash. In America, you've got pretty good numbers and a hell of a lot of cash. So I do see it as the major surge if they can get the regulations right, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who currently don't bet because it's illegal, who would love to if it was legal. And so there's potential there. What about to end off, Martin, from a Bayes perspective? What's going on in America for you guys? Because obviously you've done some deals with Riot and Activision Blizzard. Is this with a view to the US markets, or is this just general part of your business?
So first, of course, these are our data partnerships, and we need them. They are not forged towards US, but of course, this is basically the fuel for our business. So this we are buying, and we are improving then the data and selling it. And but US is important for us. We have several conversations, and really since end of last year, we see their increased demand. The regulation is changing, and a lot of states following Nevada, obviously. And the more they open it, the more other states are open it. Still, the fragmentation is the problem, that in some states you have only pre-match allowed. So, and you need, even for some tournaments, it's a bit over-regulated. So even for some tournaments, you need a special permission. The tournaments need to be certified. It's really complicated situation. Yeah. Maybe one word
Guys,
Okay, sorry. I'm fine.
Sorry, no, we're out of time. Marek, did you want to make just one final comment on the US situation? Is it relevant to what you guys are doing at Oddin?
Yeah, absolutely. We have multiple partners we are speaking to. We are already integrated with Scientific Games, so there will be a push into the US that we've already touched. So definitely a lot of interest. We are speaking to much more platforms with a focus currently in Europe, but going forward in the US as well. So yeah, everybody expects US to be a huge market, and I do not see any reason why not.
Yeah, I agree. And guys, thanks so much. It was great to hear from you, and I hope the audience got a lot out of it. We got through most of the questions, I think. And thanks very much.